is up, folks? Welcome back to Strange New Show. Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Strange New. For a second there, I was like, what show are we doing? I couldn't remember, but it's Strange New Show. Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And today we are talking about Season 2, Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War. Mike has already said to me, he texted me and then said just now, he still is ruminating and trying to figure out how he feels about this episode. I'm excited to dive into it, and maybe we'll do some psychoanalysis and figure out what's going on in Mike's head that makes him
in many ways, I really liked it. I feel loud. In many ways, I really liked it, and in some ways, I feel like it was a different show. We gotta talk about it.
Yeah, we are. Yes, we are. I'm excited to do that. So, so here we go. But before we talk about Under the Cloak of War, first off, we only have 3 more episodes of Strange New Worlds, period, at this point, because Season 3 will be coming, but who knows how far that will be delayed as a result of the writers' strike. We support our writers and actors 100%. But before we do any of that, we have to talk about how you felt about those old scientists. Certainly, a lot of people checked out that episode, of course, because, it's a famous episode, super, super fun. Kevin Miles comes in with a 95, Worf's big ol' boot shivs with a 92, Harry Pothead with a 90, JD, full 100, and a new friend. Now, if I'm reading the code here with it, I believe it's Incubus, at Incubus, but with some numbers thrown in there. I figured it out. New friend, welcome. Thank you for watching. Gives it a 96 self-sealing stem bolts. That averages out to a very, very good episode of Star Trek.
Now, hold on.
Yes.
Did you get them all? Because there were definitely people who were like, the Lower Deck sucks.
Well, there's one person who hated Lower Decks, but you know what? If you don't give a rating in self-sealing stem bolts, how am I don't know how to incorporate a fart noise into the numerical algorithm. Okay,
well, you know what? Or you know what? Here's how we'll do it. Because we have to respect everybody, right? Let me go ahead and re-give the average.
Okay, the average is a lot. Boom! Okay, yes, it's a very high average being heckled from the comments.
That's not real Trek!
Yeah, people feel very strongly about new Trek.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Come and say hi.
Chancellor Jen is here.
Hey, everybody.
What's up, Chancellor Jen?
How are you?
This is Strange New Show, so this is a show you don't watch with everybody's hot.
Pike.
That's true. Everybody's super hot.
Yeah, there's
mostly
his butt.
us.
What do you think of his
Silver
butt?
Fox.
Yeah, his butt's right here.
It's looking pretty good. Let's do squats.
He does squat. I'm sure he squats. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That was what a great cameo from our boss. All right. Well, I think let's have no further ado and talk about Under the Cloak of War.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this episode. There it is. It aired on July 27th, 2023. I can't wait to hear some of our top song from you, Mike. It's called 7 by Jungkook featuring Lato.
I was ready for it. I was going to give you something, but then you said the name of the song. And I don't even know. I don't want to disrespect hip hop, I'm assuming.
Who knows? I mean,
I love features. Features are my favorite thing.
Yes.
Because at that point, aren't you just in the song? Right? Like it's a Keith Varney featuring Mike and Dick. Well, then it's just us. Isn't it just us at that point?
It depends. It depends. Did I write the song and then have you like rap over a little bit of it?
Barry Manilow featuring Bruce Sussman.
It's a deep cut. That is the
deepest cut.
The deepest cut. Yeah. No, I forgot. I didn't listen to this one.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's 7 by Jungkook featuring Lato. It's possible
you
that
thought
Jungkook
6 was bad, but wait, 'cause 7's coming. Nah. Featuring.
Oh, Mike, we know 7 isn't coming.
No. You're lucky if 4.5 gets halfway there.
You know what, Mike? So if 4.5 is halfway there, what number is that?
Oh, that's not real Trek.
You can't average. You can't average that. All right. The top movie was something that you are aware of is Barbie. Week 2, starting to dominate the globe with the Barbie of it all. So the weekly
Still dominating, I think.
Still dominating. The weekly world news headline from 20 years previous.
Wait, hold on.
Mike,
Slow play it, Keith, because...
slow play it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a 3,000-year-old priestess, but maybe we'll just count up the last 10. There it is. Mike is pulling it up. He's putting in the file. It's a 3,000-year-old priestess revived in a top-secret Libya lab. Gaddafi, I want my mummy. Wait, this whole thing, there's so much more.
After
There's
daring
so much
raid,
more.
CIA reports, we have her in D.C. safe house.
But that's not it. All new prophecies from 2003 from Nostradamus. Nostradamus's idiot brother.
Sometimes they phone it in, but this one is just hitting. Crop circles on White House lawn baffle feds.
Nostradamus.
Look at that. Hold on. Time out.
I think we... Wow.
That's offensive, but it's pretty great.
Wow. That's... my goodness. Well, we're off to a hell of a start on this very serious, very dark episode of Star Trek.
Fair.
Which was directed by Jeffrey W. Bird, who this is Jeffrey's first episode of Strange New Worlds, but he did do one episode of Disco. And it was written by Davi Perez, who wrote on All Those Who Wander. Now it is time for us to show the people who are probably wish they could wander away from our ranks because of how we started this episode. Tell us who's patroning our patron and what are they getting?
Keith, we just watched Lower Decks, and spoiler alert, we did another episode we're going to be posting soon. Plus, you can watch me watch everything in real time. Sometimes, like last night, I was just dumbfounded most of the time and really in my thoughts and in my feels, so I didn't even talk that much. Keith and I are going to be watching on the Patreon the start of Deep Space Nine Season 4, the 90-minute movie. And I think CEO Jen might even join us for that.
Oh, fantastic.
Plus, we do some AMAs, we do some other stuff, we give some giveaways, which we promise and then don't do, but we will do eventually. But mostly, and I mean it from the bottom of our hearts, the YouTube demonetizes everything, and it takes a lot of time to do this show, so every little cent you guys throw our way helps. We appreciate it. You're producers, you're our producers, and if you can't join the team, make sure to like and subscribe to the video. That helps just as much, so does engagement. Bryant Kimball, Beersock, Casey Clark, Jason, Mo, Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and Mysterious Household. And we might be featuring some of Anne's work on the Patreon pretty soon. Worf's Big Old Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Richard Coleman, Harry Pothead, which is his actual name, it turns out. That it's not a drug reference. CRM Productions, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon, Steve Brown, YouTube viewer, JD Makes, who's just sending mail everywhere all the time and coming up, and every time I ask a question on the air, he comes up with the answer and he sends me emails and he's, JD, you are an all-star. Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell,
Who
CRM.
is also sending stuff in the mail.
Everybody is an all-star. Hey now, you're an all-star. That guy from Smash Mouth, he died, now I feel bad. Chris Mitchell, CRM, Pat Cronin, everybody, you know what I'm saying, join the team. Patreon.com/
Mike, do you smell toast? What's going on over there?
He did die, that guy.
Yes, he did. Just like you almost did on the air. All right, I was going to say a bunch of other things, but I think we should just jump forward and do the most trivial of segments. Now, Keith, waste your time.
2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Trivial trivia. Just a couple of little things here, all related to Cliff Howard, who is on the show. Did you remember Cliff Howard in a show that we've already seen him in?
In everything? I mean, he's been in everything, but of course The Practice.
Clint Howard? No. Yeah.
And guess what? Clint Howard doesn't need to be doing anything. He doesn't need a job. He doesn't need money. So this is a guy doing it for the love of the game.
Well, but did you know we've already seen him on Deep Space Nine?
Was he the understudy to the Negus?
He should have been. He does play Ferengis later, but no, he was on Past Tense, Part 2.
You
Now,
want to know why I keep laughing? I gotta tell
why
you.
do you keep laughing?
I gotta get a peek behind the curtain, everybody. So CEO Jen, for those of you who don't know, is incredibly talented, incredibly wonderful, beautiful as you've seen, but also just very giving as a partner. And she always brings me, while we're doing shows, lunch. And this time, and usually I'm able to like eat some salad or some eggs off camera and put my mute button on, but today she brought me. So I don't know, a human being can't eat a pastry subtly, like a crumbly, flaky pastry. There's no way to do this. So I'm just gonna have to wait on it, I guess.
No, I think you should do it. I think that's gonna up our patrons.
Just ASMR of Mike eating in close up.
I mean, I might quit, but we may get some more patrons. Anyway, Clint Howard, we saw him on Past Tense, Part 2, I believe, on Deep Space Nine. But Mike, I mentioned it then, but I know you don't
Take
remember.
a bite. Go ahead.
Not after what Pike's just done to it.
I was gonna say, if I was gonna try to get you on camera, basically eating his ass.
Mike, it's been a long day already. I'm trying to talk about how cool Clint Howard is, who has done. Now Mike's dead. You want? Well, congratulations! What a great day.
Okay, go ahead.
As Mike sobs on camera.
I don't think.
Wow.
I don't think any of that's gonna make the cut. But let's go ahead.
Oh no! We're keeping it in. No, it's too late. If you waste my time, Mike, you're gonna waste their time. This stays in.
All right. This is an important episode, so I'm gonna get my ish together.
Yeah, right? This is the 5th appearance of Clint Howard, who appeared on the original series, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Disco, and now Strange New Worlds. He's part of the fabric of Trek. And his character in this show shares a name with Buck Martinez, also Blue Jays broadcaster, catcher, and former manager. I'm assuming that somebody on the writing staff or producing staff were a big fan. And because, you know, I always try to work in like Jack Edwards and Andy Berkeley and stuff because I'm a big Bruins fan, so I enjoy watching them. So there it is. I bet that's an Easter egg for somebody. So the guest stars this week include, of course, Clint Howard, as I mentioned, as Buck Martinez, and Robert Wisdom as Doc Ra. We also have Seda Ali as Jix, Ryan Allen as Polk, Caroline Das as the lead pilot, Rong Fu as Jenna Mitchell, Kyle Gatehouse as Val Trask, Jose Gutierrez Solona as Ensign Alvarado, Brendan Jeffers as Ensign Inman, and Vanessa Smythe as Harper. So I think, as we have much to discuss, and I'm very curious to hear about Mike's consternation about this episode, let's hop into the screening room.
I won't give it away, but I am. All right, let's just roll. That was abrupt.
That was very abrupt. So this ambassador has just brokered peace among 3 planets that are now under Federation jurisdiction after the Klingon War. But it's weird, because the ambassador, the Federation ambassador, is a Klingon general who defected during the war after building up a reputation as a butcher. The crew on the Enterprise who fought in the war are not thrilled to have him aboard. The Klingon is genial and appears to be a roly-poly buddy to all, and asks for a tour. On the bridge, meanwhile, Uhura and Ortegas argue about his motives. Ortegas doesn't trust him, says even the Klingons call him the Butcher of Jagal because apparently he killed his own men to get away and defect. So they go to 10 forward, and Spock is trying to make the replicator create Roctagino. They don't mention it by name, but it's clearly Roctagino.
Great shot.
The replicator, uses the sound effect from the original series replicators. It's pretty cool, even if it feels a little bit out of date with the contemporary sound design. And I love the fact that it finishes with a ding.
The ding, I missed it, but no, that's the next thing. Yeah, it finishes with a ding, which made me laugh audibly. But the visual design is super cool. It's my favorite, Rock DeGino transport of all time, or creation of all time.
Yeah, because on all other shows, it's part of like a console with a top, like a microwave without a top. This is just right on the counter, which is pretty cool. Although I wonder how safe it would be. Like, what if you had your hand there and then it beamed the Rock DeGino onto your hand?
Well, it sort of happens, doesn't it? Kind of.
Yeah. Well, it's too hot. So they accidentally burn the Klingon, and he shows a flash of anger, but covers it, which I thought was a nice little touch there. They head to the sickbay to get it fixed, and Mbenga and Chapel both immediately and visibly freak out. Mbenga goes into his office and has a full-on PTSD panic attack. So we know we got some stuff to talk about. So we begin Act 1. A few years ago, in a flashback, during the war on the moon of Jago, Chapel takes a shuttle through a combat zone to a remote medical base. It's a pretty hairy entrance. And she's greeted when she gets there by Baylock. And he explains that they're basically a MASH unit in a desperate way. No supplies, no organ generator. Here right on the front lines where the Klingons are trying to find them, and they've got sort of deflector thingies so they can't find them, but they're just bombing the crap out of the whole hillside trying to find them. And that he tells her she should go talk to his second in command, Dr. Mbenga. This is the first time they meet.
And he satisfies his 2 shirtless scenes per episode clause. And he begins.
Yeah, well, hey, look, if I worked out as hard as he does to look like that, I'd be shirtless right here on the podcast. But as it is now, because I don't, you're lucky I'm not wearing 3 shirts.
Patreon exclusive. Keith and Mike sit in their own shame.
I'm trying to think of what the name for the show would be, like Jabba and the Italian.
No, Jabba and the butt.
Jabba and the butt. Yeah, great. Anyway, and she discovers that she's already the head nurse, and they start taking fire. They hear a bunch of alarms, and a bunch of wounded beam in, leaving them to start triaging. It's chaotic. Someone comes in with his guts literally hanging out.
Yeah.
Intense, especially for Star Trek. Mbenga knows there's nothing they can do for him, re the lack of organ generator. So Mbenga teaches Chapel how to hide him in the transporter buffer, which of course is a technique we know that he buffered his daughter in. Back in our time, Mbenga is trying to repair a metaphorical medical bay when Pike comes in to check on him. Jagal is where this Klingon got his reputation. But the Federation sent orders that all war veterans are to be nice to him. But Pike smartly says, not at the emotional expense of my crew. And I think this is like Pike shows, as he has several times, shown some emotional IQ, realizing...
So I tend to disagree with you there.
Interesting.
I get it. Look, this episode is all about gray area. It's all about contradiction. It's all about two opposing ideas overlapping and how they can't overlap but must. I get it, okay? But for this type of television show, it's difficult because generally speaking, the overarching thematic theses of the series, all of its incarnations, is very distinct, right? And this, in many ways, flies in the face of it. And while that can be effective, and I think is effective here, I'm just giving you that it's not that I'm missing the point. Okay, I get the point.
Right.
So, a couple of things. I get it. Pike's in a tough spot here because Starfleet's like, yeah, this guy he's a figurehead of peace. It's a great look. It's a great commercial. You gotta tell everybody to play nice. And I think Pike does recognize it's going to be hard for a few people specifically, and he is checking in here, but the Pike would be like, you know what? I have this really important duty for you in Chapel. The cargo bay needs scrubbing. Like, he would not put them in a situation where they'd have to like sit down or have dinner with the guy. I just don't think he would. If he was really if his emotional quotient was high enough, as it should be, he wouldn't have put them in this situation.
Well,
of course,
but
there's no episode then, but
no, but two things. One, Pike doesn't see what we're seeing, right? That both M'Benga and Chapel are covering it. Pike also doesn't know what happened. Yeah. He has no idea the extent of what they went through or what happened there. And so he doesn't know that they have a previous relationship. Mm-hmm. And so Pike is just thinking of, oh, yes, you both fought in France, but you don't know, oh, I battled that guy specifically.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because even then when Spock pulls up all his research to help out Chapel, they don't have there was no POV first person account of what went down there with them.
And they're obviously not talking about it to anybody other than each other, which is a very common thing when you go through trauma like that. You're not advertising, you're not talking about it. All of that stuff, none of that went into the reports. And so it wouldn't be on their file. So Pike would know, oh, this might be a little difficult, not have any idea the extent of it. And he does clock it when he sees him actually freaking out. The minute he sees the emotional extent of what's going on, he's like, get out of here. That's my defense of Pike here.
Okay.
So, anyway, and so M'Benga and Chapel say, I'll do my best. They're going to have to go to the welcome dinner, and they agree to go, and they say, we'll do our best to Pike, and wait for him to leave, and then to each other are able to say, we are really not happy about doing this. And M'Benga is clearly still filled with rage. They have more flashbacks to horrors that they dealt with on the MASH unit, and Chapel had to manually pump a dude's heart. It was pretty brutal, and I especially imagine for Chapel, right? Because today, manually palpitating a heart is something that somebody in the ER or a surgeon might actually have to do. That's probably part of their medical training. But in the future, there's none of that. And
I was going to say, that's the thing about this scene that I've in 24 hours since I've watched it, I've come around to a little bit. Because originally I was like, isn't Trek all about the aspirational future where we have laser beams that can, make your lacerations go away, and doctoring isn't as difficult. Doctoring can be about bigger picture stuff, because this type of thing isn't the on the ground MASH unit type of thing isn't happening because wars are different now and whatnot. But I've come around to that. Hey, look, the Klingons are still using batlith, right? These giant, they are in their hand-to-hand combat, cutting people's guts out. That's just kind of who they is. That's what this conflict is about.
And the reality of war is, it always ends up that way.
What does Fallout, a great video game, say? It opens with the same VO for every version of the game. War never changes.
Yeah, and war. You build up all this technology and all of this whatever, and war deletes that, and it always gets back to blood and guts and horror. And that we as a species have been warring for a million years, and even today in our super high-tech war, it's still on the surface, on the ground, it's still holding somebody's heart in your hands.
And we have led up to this in previous episodes about their experience and their kind of latent PTSD. So it doesn't come out of nowhere. So I've come around to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's dark. It's super, super dark. But I think that, the point here is that war is real. And that, even in our sci-fi world, war is a very serious thing. And as I texted to you, this is a sequel/sister to some stuff we're going to get to in Deep Space Nine. So it's really interesting. Anyway, much more to talk about on our other show, our sister show. Keith and Mike watch Deep Space Nine. If you're not watching it, come join us.
Season 4. Here we are.
4.
People are hype. People are writing into the show just to say, I'm hype.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
is
No,
cool.
and it's like we're about to hit it. We've been teasing. Well, we're finally here. So, anyway, Act 2 of Strange New Show. Mbenga walks to the dinner and runs into Ortegas, who is psyching herself up to go in. They decide to pretend they aren't pissed and go in. And they do, and have a terribly awkward dinner where the Klingon Falstaffs and everyone is served. Everyone who didn't serve in the war finds him charming. Everybody who did serve in the war are white knuckling it, and everybody else is chill. It's a bit of a take on the dinner scene from Star Trek VI. We have to watch Star Trek VI for the patrons. It's such a good movie. We have another. Yeah.
I mean, you have to say, as far as what an ambassador is supposed to be doing, that's the type of personality you want.
No, absolutely. I mean, he is doing everything he can.
Well, because let's be honest. Even current politics and whatnot, there is a bit of propaganda that goes along with your ambassadoring.
Oh, a huge amount of propaganda.
Yeah. Even if it's fueled with aspiration and fueled with.
Well, I mean, the line between diplomacy and propaganda is pretty blurry sometimes. Because
I feel like,
to be
correct me if I'm
diplomatic.
wrong, Keith. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure it's popped up in other series of which it's very clear I have not watched a lot of. But this show specifically, and Deep Space Nine a little bit, but this show in its 20 episodes, 18 we've seen so far, is more willing to put Starfleet under they're just like every other politic lens, right? There are those, like Number One and whatnot, who will continue to sing its aspirational praises, but we're seeing a lot of business that shows them to be kind of very much the politics as usual as we've seen it.
Yeah, or certainly susceptible to the same things that all federations are susceptible to. Yeah, I mean, I think contemporary Trek goes there. On Next Gen, it was much. Well, actually, there's the tradition of the crazy admiral who's bad, but the rest of Starfleet is good, which happens constantly on like Next Gen and that kind of thing. Deep Space Nine has an interesting perspective on it that we're going to get to know. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely a more skeptical of Starfleet and the authorities than some of them. But
I mean, this episode, I would, and we'll talk about much later. Philosophically, I would say this is much more nihilistic than any proper Star Trek episode or movie or anything I've seen. Period.
Yeah, it is,
because it feels like it comes down in a place that isn't like that isn't just. Sometimes, like Deep Space Nine is very good at giving you the whole balance situation, whereas this is like. Yeah, even sometimes when you want to show balance, guess what? It's just not that way.
Yeah, there are limits to our utopian ideology.
Which we'll get to it.
I think that's where we're getting. All right, whew. So we have another flashback, and Mbenga talks to the guy they saved, with Chapel holding his heart. Then Mbenga and an Andorian, that's hard to say, and an Andorian talk privately. The Andorian is Special Forces.
Wait,
and they
sorry, hold on. Okay.
There we go. The Special Forces Andorian and Mbenga discuss General Dakra.
This design is awesome on this Andorian. With his gooey blind eye with the huge scar and stuff. Really cool.
Great makeup effects here. They're talking about General Dakra, who is, of course, our ambassador, and they say he's killing civilians and we need to take him out. And he tries to talk Mbenga into doing it, knowing that Mbenga is basically Starfleet's Jason Bourne.
Did we know that before that?
We
had little hints.
We had hints. I mean, in the season premiere, right, where he takes the Hulk goo, we certainly see his abilities, and we know he had a mysterious past in the war. I think this is the first time we've explicitly said, like, we called you the Ghost. You were a Federation assassin, essentially. But Mbenga just wants to be a doctor. So the Andorian's backup request is he wants some Protocol 12, the Hulk serum that we saw in the season premiere, which Mbenga designed and denies having any of at that particular moment. So we head back to the dinner, and the topic of Jagal comes up. Here's where it gets good and awkward. Ra says that Jagal changed him. After how it ended, he changed his beliefs about war. Ortegas asks if the story is true, that he killed his own commanders to escape. And Ra does not deny it. Ortegas can't help herself from challenging him, and she is forced to peace out, and Chapel follows her.
Clarify for me the lore. What is the story? What is the myth that has been told? He killed. They were coming to kill him because
the Federation was going to. All right.
No,
so
the three other commanders were going to kill him. He was in his.
No, his story.
Mm-hmm.
His story is that the three commanders were going to start killing civilians and killing anybody who wasn't a Klingon, and he thought that's too far, that's too much, so he killed all three of them.
And then defected.
Defected and went to the Federation.
One of my problems is that I don't feel that story was clearly, it was clear as mud, right? I didn't quite understand what that story was, that myth was, so that when the reveal happens later, instead of being affected in the moment, I was trying to put it all together. I was like, wait, what was really happening? What's the Jason Bourne of it all? Like, that is a little muddy for me.
I agree with you. The first time I saw it was a little muddy. When I watched it a second time, I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, because when you're describing it to me right now, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And it makes the ending make a lot more sense. The ending confused the hell out of me on the first watch. And I had to think about it too much. And then by that point, it was over. So just a point.
I agree. I agree that should have been made a little bit more clear. It is there. It's just it went by a little fast, a little confusing on the first.
Because I think the focus, and they made a choice. The focus is so on the flashbacks and their experience,
right?
That we lose a little about what the lie he's been living as.
I think it's less. I don't think we need to have seen it. I think we just need to have the two dueling stories be clear.
Mm-hmm.
To have it very clear what his story is versus what Mbenga knows. So yeah, that's one more line recapitulating that I think would have helped. Anyway, Pike apologizes for Ortegas' outburst, but clocks that Mbenga is also freaking out and tells him to go check on Chapel, which I thought. But Mike,
I just don't want to get ahead of myself. It's so hard though. But like, regardless though, it's a question for later. But I'm gonna post the question now.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say all BS. Okay. Does that negate? Does that vis-a-vis mean that his current work or his current desire to spread peace or to be a champion for peace is necessarily bullshit? Does it mean that it's for naught? Does it negate it in any way? That is the question.
Well, and that is a question. After a war, I mean, we were perfectly happy to have Nazis help us create the nuclear bomb. But like, let's say like Mengele's like, I want to be an ambassador and spread peace all over the world. Is there a point where it's too far?
Okay, well then
is he lying about what he did in order to facilitate this? Because I think a big part of this is with Ra, he is lying about what happened. He's lying about how he got there. And so if he'd come clean and said, yes, I was doing all of this, he'd probably be tried for war crimes. But instead, he lied and said, oh, I was innocent in this, and then got this other position.
Let me tell you, we didn't There are those who argue we didn't need to drop that bomb on Hiroshima, let alone Nagasaki. Had we not come out of the positive side of that war, there might have been many U.S. presidents convicted of war crimes. I mean, you can...
For sure.
It's a fine line. Razor's edge.
Well, and I think that's the whole thing. I mean,
all we killed was civilians. That's all that was killed in that.
Absolutely. And had we not won that war, 100%. There would have been tribunals on the other side.
Now, all of the Holocaust victims that we saved and that we liberated and whatnot, does that mean all of that was done under false pretenses, under a false flag? No, I don't think it does.
Well, however, I think the difference in the analogy here is the lying about it, right? Because
we said there was evidence that Hiroshima had...
well, no, not even that. It's like FDR was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing for this reason, being pretty upfront about exactly what, yes, I am killing civilians for this greater good or whatever.
I don't know that he did that on television. I don't know that he did it, that was the speech he read, Keith, that I'm going to go kill civilians today to do,
Well, no, but I don't think the intent was to kill civilians. The intent was to show the awesome destruction of the bomb. But point being, the difference here with our Klingon is that he's pretending to be the good guy. He's not owning up to what he did. He's pretending he didn't do it. Regardless of what he did, whether it was gray, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether it was whatever.
To be fair, I think it's a better episode if it is more gray. I think that I think you're okay. Let's move on. This is I'm mired in it, which I think is great. Actually, the more that's good. That's good art.
We're right in it. Yeah, no, that's fun. But we'll get there. We got to push through. We're gonna get there.
I know it goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it. I feel like it needs to be said. We are never discussing any of these geopolitical things or atrocities or war with any sort of flippancy, right? Even in the lens of our funny podcast, but we have to use these analogies to have the conversation. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. So basically, Mike Indeglio against war crimes, coming out strongly. Thumbs down to war crimes.
You're not a patriot. How can you say that was World War II? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just...
Yeah. Anyway. So he sends Mbenga out smartly, but on his way out, Ra grabs his arm and asks him to spar with him later. It's tense. And I'm not... Yeah, go ahead. Mike has so many feelings.
Looking back... Because that was like a very out of nowhere grab. You don't think they don't play any hint of recognition, do they?
I don't think so. Yeah. No. I think that that Ra. I think I read this as Ra having bought his own line. Like he believes he is this good guy and who can do all. I think he bought into it because on some level it's true. Right.
And I do think he can see in other people that we're still struggling with it. Now, I'll say this: I'm arguing myself. He has had an easier time letting this ish go because it's all come up smelling rosies for him because he's been able to craft the story and whatnot as this reformed thing instead of like a guy who slaughtered kids and then escaped.
And is now using it to his advantage. I mean, because it's like for him, he's a fart sniffer.
It's like those dudes who get arrested for robbing banks, but then get taken out of prison and made feds who
I think he genuinely believes he's some sort of a hero. And has denied, like in his own head, he's rewritten the history.
Keith, you're a serial killer, but instead of putting you to death, we're going to hire you for the FBI to help us solve serial killer murders.
Right, and then I'm like, God, I'm such a good person for stopping all these bad guys.
I wrote so many good books. I helped Clarice out.
Yeah, there should be a statue of me because I'm so altruistic.
All I ask is someone's heart and in some pate.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think his arrogance is like, I can solve everybody's feelings problems. Like, That like I can make anybody my friend because I'm so
See, all that is
charming.
good stuff, but you don't get to even contemplate any of it until the last 3 minutes of the episode, right? Like, because there are actual pertinent, cool conversations and thoughts and discussions to be had if he is what he is saying he is. That is actually really interesting.
Well, and I think we spend the episode from the perspective of everybody except for Mbenga, wondering what his motives are, wondering what the deal is with him.
It's funny, I just took him at face value from the top because I thought the episode was going to be like, you have to let it go. In order for us to move forward in any way and to find any peace, you're going to have to let it go a little bit.
And that would be, if this were next gen, that would be the story. And it's a slightly more complex story than that.
It's next gen, Keith.
It's next gen, yes. So we have another flashback, and the soldier we saved steps out and watches the battle from a distance. He and Mbenga talk. He signed up to Starfleet to explore, and now he's a soldier and he hates it.
And this is one of the episodes, to get onto a production a little bit, that where the volume didn't work for me.
The volume?
The volume, like the CG of like, if it felt like the war was happening on the volume behind us, and we're just like on a. I mean, it looked great, but I could feel it. Yeah, felt like it was a disconnect.
You definitely do the. I think it's a depth perspective thing. Mm-hmm. It's very clear that it's a screen that's 8 feet away from them, and we've the illusion of depth perspective is not.
These beats are great. Well. These beats are real great.
Yeah, and Mbenga says stopping the Klingons from destroying the sector is part of the job. Oof! Wow, he's had a rough day. And he says, we fight and hope it doesn't change us. But if we don't fight, the disease takes over and we don't have a home to go home to. And of course, it's going to change them all. And that's, why, again, another hot take. War's not good. So
do you know what I like about sci-fi, Trek specifically, is they've created this world, and sci-fi really, where when you have the bold underlined lines that are just like on their face, if you just write them on a notepad, you're like, this is cheesy as hell. Like, you can't act this. They always do. They are always able to do it, and it doesn't feel weird because it is a heightened universe we're in. You know that? Like, he's giving all like bold underline thematic lines here, but they all work, which is a credit to him as an actor, but also I think
yeah, I mean, I'll talk more at the end there. But Babs Olusanmakun is phenomenal.
Yeah, you could make a strong argument that this is an Emmy award-winning performance.
Oh, he should. He won't, because sci-fi does not get Emmy recognition for acting, but he absolutely deserves an Emmy for this episode. I think he does phenomenal work. Anyway, in Act 3, we're back on the moon, and the Special Forces soldiers have an orders for the entire outfit. So, 2 things are going to happen. 1, all the regular soldiers are going to make a huge offensive and basically go out and get killed as a distraction for the Black Ops guys to sneak out and try to kill Ra. So, so the foot soldiers, including our friend here, are probably going to go out and die. And the same kid they saved, like I said, Mbenga tries to stop him from going on the mission, but his speech worked too well, and he's going to go. So after the dinner, Spock can tell that Chapel is freaking out and wants to help her, but admirably, eventually, understands that he needs to leave her alone. And I thought that was a very mature whole sequence of events here. He's trying, you don't get it. Yeah, but I did all this research. You don't get it. But you just need to be alone, don't you? Yeah. And I think that was great.
Absolutely, 100%.
Mike, what did you hate about it?
No, I'm just zooming out a little bit. I feel like Keith Varney. I was all like, yeah, let's do this thing. And now I'm like, I'm over the rom-com. I'm done with it.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. I think we just switched on that.
Just like, there's bigger fish to fry. I could care less.
There are, but I actually don't think it's rom-com. I think it is good relationship writing to sort of write that type of interaction.
I don't have nothing to do with the interaction. I think it's great. Yeah. I'm talking the macro picture, the Spock Chapel thing. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can take it or leave it.
Yeah, which is I'm more that way in the macro. I just liked this micro.
I thought the scene was great because it does something for both characters. It's her this is like so beyond boyfriend girlfriend stuff because he's still in that sort of giddy like,
right?
I like somebody thing, and she's this like it's so past that, right? Like I like this scene for both of them. I'm just saying this is the first time I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Certainly tonally. Where they've been, and then this episode is just it's a pretty large tonal shift from last week. I'll say that. So back on the moon, they're getting shelled like mad. The battle is happening. They lose power and need to reboot the transporters to get them back on with auxiliary power, but this will mean they'll have to kill the guy they put in the transporter buffer. And M'Benga does it without hesitation. The greater good. And the wounded start flooding in. Oof, tough. Then, in our time, M'Benga and Ra spar in Klingon martial arts, and they're both very good at it. They discuss putting the past behind them, but Ra seems to be doing it much more happily than M'Benga. And he wants to work with M'Benga. He wants to convert him over to his side, which I think part of Ra's desire to convert people is a way to justify his actions. Like everybody he gets behind, everybody he turns, validates what he did or didn't do in his own head, whether he knows that or not. He's searching for validation. He's searching for it was okay what he did.
Yeah, and I want to make the argument that all of that is great, but it undercuts what he's. I guess what I'm going for is that like what I am describing is the episode that it could have been, right? That it fakes that it is. Not fakes, but like false flags.
So you want it to be forgiveness and we find a way to move forward.
But as we're talking about it, Keith, I'm thinking to myself, but we've seen that episode on every
Many
show,
times.
on every side, and this takes balls to be like, it's just not that easy. It's just not that simple. And there isn't an easy solution to that. I mean, the question becomes like, where does that put you? And I have some other issues with some other things, but I like being challenged. You and I went and saw a musical once. It's not even, I won't get into the weeds of it. Strange Loop, which won a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it, right? But it challenged the form in a way that forced me to like think about why didn't I like it? Why wasn't this fun for me? Why didn't this? Why didn't that? And question myself, did I not like it? Or was I so challenged that I was just looking for a situation where I want to sit back and just let it wash over me and enjoy it, right? Like, what are you going into something for? What are you expecting versus what you get and how you have to interact with it are all parts of this. And so the fact that I'm still chewing and I'm still tasting and all of that the next day and probably will continue to is good, is a positive, is a net gain. And it is completely intended. 100%.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, this is supposed to be a hard one to chew. So M'Benga asks if he really killed his own men. And Ra says, yeah, I did it because they decided to kill the civilians. So M'Benga asks, just out of curiosity, who of your men fought the hardest? And we see flashes of the battle, which is bloody and violent, hand to hand with a Klingon blade. And Ra says, hey, I stood up for what was right, and for that, I get called a butcher. Whew! This causes M'Benga to attack more aggressively. They eventually have a stare down, then Ra bows and leaves. M'Benga takes a shower. Jesus, he is ripped. Then he has another flashback of the attack. So that night, the Andorian is dead. The attack failed. They did not get him, and bodies are quite literally piling up, including the kid that they saved is now dead with his throat slit. And M'Benga picks up a Klingon dagger. Probably the one that slit the throat 100%. Of the kid.
Yeah, it's like the... we'll get there. Forget it.
So in Act 4, Una goes to Pike and says, we need to get this guy off our ship.
Una goes to Pike and says, hey, listen to Mike in the first 5 minutes of this podcast.
Go listen to Mike. It's very important.
Yeah, but not skip past the part where he tells Keith to eat your ass.
Yes, don't just ignore that part. Ignore that part. And Pike smartly agrees, you know what? Let's take a shortcut. Let's get this guy off. So back on Jagal, in the flashback, M'Benga has suited up with battle armor, and he tells Chapel he's going to go finish the mission.
You know who he is, Keith? He's Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes! Yes, he is. Ooh, he's my favorite G.I. Joe.
Me too. Isn't Snake Eyes?
Everybody's favorite. Yeah. No, I mean, ninjas in
One
the
of my
80s,
favorite
man.
action figures of all time is that first wave 80s Snake Eyes.
Well, for me, it's the 84, not the 82, with the sort of the triangle visor as opposed to the goggles.
100%.
So it's actually the second wave of Snake Eyes. I
Black,
never
right?
I never got my hands on that figure, but like that thing's worth, like, if you get it in box, it's almost $2,000. It's craziness. Anyway, Chapel says, yeah, go make him pay. M'Benga then pulls out the green super goo, gives some to Chapel, and leaves. Back in sickbay, M'Benga opens a case, and Ra comes in to say goodbye. M'Benga says, go away. And if somebody says go away to me in the way that he did, I'm going the freak away. But he says, you were just here to make yourself feel better, which is true. Then M'Benga drops the hammer. It says, I know it was you who gave the order to kill the civilians. And you didn't kill your commanders. I did. We see the flashback of the killing again. And it was M'Benga who killed the commanders hand to hand, brutally. And he says, you turned me into a monster. I am the butcher of Jagal. And here you are using the blood on my hands to make yourself a saint. And Ra says, people need saints. He is so full of shit. They get into a struggle, and we and Chapel hear the stabbing of a knife. M'Benga killed him. Later,
I don't know how much of a struggle. I mean, M'Benga, I think, he didn't need an instigating factor there. I think it was
he took care of it, but it is a little ambiguous who made the first move, because we don't see it.
Who shot first,
directly.
Keith?
Who shot first? No, I mean,
Han?
Han shot first.
In this episode, I think Han shot first.
Han definitely shot first. So later, Chapel and Pike discuss the knife that M'Benga had the blood of the 3 Klingons still on it. And Chapel lies and says Ra attacked him. Pike and La'an clearly know enough to be suspicious. I.e., Chapel lies and says Ra attacked him with that knife. The other way around. Pike goes to talk to M'Benga and gives him a chance to tell the truth. And he does in a sort of a, what if I did? It's sort of like OJ's book. If I did it, kind of a way. And Pike asks,
Chapel's lie, in a way, sort of echoes the original lie.
Yeah, in some ways.
Yeah.
In some ways, yeah.
And Pike speaks for what I love about this scene is Pike says everything I was thinking. Like, Pike articulates exactly my conflict. Exactly. To this second, it articulates my conflict and also the conflict of Star Trek as a property's general thesis to this episode. Pretty brilliant.
Yeah, Pike basically says, all right, but where's the line?
Yeah, you get to decide? You get to decide that, okay, maybe at that debt, you could even justify your movements then. But now, you can just exact revenge 30 years later, or however long later it is?
Yeah, well, and then M'Benga says, you have the privilege of believing in the best of people. But if you went through what I did, you don't get that privilege anymore. And Pike nods, even though they both know what happened.
And Pike's like, I got you. Even though Pike is really good at, like, you've done Some really shady shit. But you know what? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And of course, Mbenga fixes Chekhov's bed again, and it fails almost immediately because Mbenga is the bed. All right, lots more to talk about. Let's do it in our little after show, shall we?
I won't give it away, but I am. All right, let's just roll.
That's the wrong one.
So wrong. But I just let it play. Let's do it again.
You sure did. I was like, are you just gonna roll with it, or?
Pitch to it again, Keith.
Okay, and now it is time for what Mbenga could have done, but he chose the stabbies.
Might have been worse the second time.
Let's punch it.
Hit it.
Yo, Adrian!
It's the Punchies!
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's start with wormholes in the plot. I think Mike and I are fundamentally going to come down on opposite sides of this episode.
No, I don't know if that's true. This has been very enlightening for me. I would say I thought Pike's handling of the initial thing, though you can really hide it behind he was put in a really tight spot. I think he biffed it though, and he so readily buys Una her argument later with no kickback. That kind of proves the point, proves the premise. So maybe instead of maybe even inserting a little bit of Una's protest or somebody's protest earlier in the episode. And he was like, no, they got to come to this dinner. They should be able to do it. This Starfleet. At least have him be obstinate instead of he just comes off looking sort of emotionally naive. To me, it seems like a wormhole to me. Also, I thought it was a little muddy, the initial story. I already pointed that out. Yeah, but outside of that, I don't have any like actual like things that didn't ring true. Or...
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you that the lore is a little muddy, like we talked about. I think for Pike, Pike's journey here is part of the theme of the episode. It's the couplet at the end, right? Where Mbenga says, you have the luxury of seeing the best in people. So Pike is behaving as somebody who hasn't gone through this type of trauma, who hasn't been through war, who is giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, is going under the assumption that people are good and that things are going to be okay and that we can rise above these things because it's still philosophical, it's still hypothetical to Pike, where it's real to the veterans. And I think that his, sort of his idealism, which turns out to be naive, is a function of him not having gone through these traumatic experiences. And I think that that's part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But I have no more wormholes. Let's talk about our best moment.
I mean, I think his performance, I think, is a standout. Joseph's performance. Specifically, I really like the judo scene, which I texted you and made fun of, but I really think that it's symbolism of... There's so much symbolism. If to be indulged, I would say that the very interesting philosophical conversation taking place whilst an aggressive combat form is being expressed. On top of that, I think it's extra poignant as it's two black men having a conversation about violence and about whether violence can be forgotten, can be positive, can be used as a means to
can be justified.
There's
forgiven.
So much layered. And also Joseph shows restraint at the end. And I think there is a bit of, you can see a bit, I think there's a great performance by, who plays the Klingon?
It is Robert Wisdom.
I thought Robert Wisdom was excellent as well because if they had not done the twist at the end, you could argue that he played it he plays the performance as if he truly believes it, like you said. Like he has sniffed his whole tank of his stuff.
He's bought his own bullshit. I think he really has.
To the point where it's not bullshit. So he's not ever delivering it with even the most hint of like And he doesn't even have doesn't seem like hubris doesn't come across in the performance. So when you get any sense of it,
for me.
but I think that it's not played is what I mean. I think it's part it's part of his whole, what he is. And you could read that as confidence in having moved, because he plays it as, I've moved past it. Which is when he layers in the little bits of anger or whatnot. It's great. Anyway, this scene exposes all of that, and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's hard to pick one scene. I'm just going to say it's Bob's performance.
Yeah, I feel we both agree on that.
I just think, like, his performance in this episode is tremendous. And, you know, I come out of this, I think at this point, like, M'Benga really didn't register for me in the first season, but he might be my favorite character now, because of just this intense layers of complexity in this performance. Just, holy crap. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, for me, just his performance in this. And I just, like, I got everything. He almost never moves his face, and yet it's all right there on the surface. It's pretty impressive. All right, let's duke it out, shall we?
You get some stem bolts. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts.
For who?
For you.
For you? Oh, for me?
So, you know, before I get too far ahead, I want to say that I think it is cool that it's not just Pike's naivete. Well, that's not naivete. It's
his optimism.
I think Pike's optimism juxtaposed, my favorite word, juxtaposed with Spock's, Spock's believing that he can research himself into, even Spock having all of the knowledge and having the context. I think it does, those two things do a great framing of the fact that even with both those things, with the best of intentions and all of the knowledge and context, it's still not the same as having been there and experiencing it. It's not the same. Cannot be compared and cannot prepare you. I think it's great. And I think that's the whole episode, right? That's the gist of it. As I've said all along, it's just, you know, sometimes, and I think it's expectation, right? One of the things I love about these shows, look, I think you've all listened to us talk enough and talk. I am not a happy-go-lucky, always looks on the bright side of life kind of guy. It's not my general philosophy. I'm pretty nihilist as is. But
yeah,
it's
very interesting, the personal dynamics here, because I'm much more the optimistic Starfleet guy, and you're much more the nihilist.
But I come to certain things like this to be washed over with the thing I'm not, right? Is to be like, I want to see the hero's hero, right? I want to see that because, I don't know, I love Superman because I'm not Superman, right? But that expectation clouded this episode for me, right? That expectation was not met. And even more so, that expectation was brought up, was shown as a possibility, and then kind of squashed off.
Rejected, yeah.
Which, up till the last bit, the last scene, the reveal, and then the conversation between the two halves, between M'Benga and Pike, I still love. Like, I want to be challenged. I want that. I like the change. And I think even discussing it, right or wrong, kind of it wasn't even passing a judgment, really. It was just like the ideals. And it wasn't just him saying, well, peace is always the way. You had Ortega, you had Chapel and M'Benga like kicking back against it, and then Pike being like, no, we have to do this. Like, it was a great volley. The episode was a great volley of ideas and philosophies, and held a great mirror up to, like I just said, experience versus education versus all of those things. The ending for me, the thing that's cool about Bones is that God damn it, Jim, I'm just a doctor, right? It's these normal people in extraordinary circumstances having to be extraordinary in many ways. But our way out of this for Mbenga is like, oh, he's also a superhero. And it's like they did with Una, or like in the season 1. It's like, oh, and don't forget, super strength. Don't forget, he's Jason Bourne. Don't forget, oh, I killed everybody. Like, it's just a supernatural. It almost feels like one of those shows that introduces a supernatural element where it's not needed. It feels, it cheapened it for me in a way. I can't explain. It cheapens him a bit.
Oh, interesting.
Now, don't get me wrong. He is slaying the performance and justifying it and making this whole thing. But he is troubled and he's got all these things, but he's a superhero, right? He's a superhero. He just can't fly, in my opinion. It didn't seem necessary. It's great for the reveal of this episode for me, but like, where does that put us going forward? And he murdered this guy. Like, he straight up murdered him, man. I don't care. The whole thing is like about justice and about, I get that point, but like, yo, he straight up murdered this dude. Yeah, he killed kids and what, I get you. But like, I mean, Keith, you're totally anti-death penalty, so.
Very much so,
he
yeah.
just like straight up slaughtered this guy. Which you could just, once again, I'm not judging that, right? That it seems not appropriate. It seems a logical choice for the character. I totally get its motivation. But like, where do we go? Where do we go now? He was like, well, I mean, it's a character with gray, with ambiguous motivations and ambiguous, but like as a captain, I mean, that is a risk. That is a huge risk you now have, just like aboard the ship, right?
Well, but only a risk to that one guy.
Yeah, for now.
He's gone.
No, I mean, you only killed that one guy. Okay. I'm just saying. I guess, you know what? If Worf's coming on Deep Space Nine, like, he's killed a bunch of guys too. So I guess, who amongst us hasn't slaughtered a few?
I mean, just a few.
I don't know. I didn't love it. The ending just didn't. But then I love the conversation they have, right? Because basically Pike says everything I'm feeling. So, and at least we had that conversation. He is very willing to be like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow night for jambalaya or whatever. I don't know. That's just where I sit with it now. But that said, Keith, I'm loving this struggle. I'm loving the back and forth, because I think we've said it on many times, like, if you're not if your beliefs are so ingrained that you never challenge them, you never are willing to change or willing to conceptualize the idea of changing, well, then I ain't got nothing for you, man. You did one life, have fun. I am always willing to, and I'm still chewing a lot of this, because I get it, and I have lived an incredibly privileged life in many ways, where I have no sense of the type of PTSD and stress, and not even remotely close. But this episode does a really good job of giving it some framework in my brain. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take me a little time to chew it. Last point I want to make. Sorry, I know I'm going. What I want to heap lots of praise on. I just don't, oh man, I'm really going to do it here. You can have your opinions. I hate New Trek. I'm old school. Those, totally your prerogative. But people willing to just think that the things they love should never change and should never come at something differently, I just think it's just, there's no fun in that, right? Like, then why have anything new? If you complaint can't be, why don't we get new stuff, new Trek? But then if they try something new, you're like, no, I just want the old stuff. Well, then you can't have both of those things, right?
Well,
just go watch the old stuff.
Find civilizations we've seen before, new life and new the same things, the same things.
This took one of the guiding principles, like, just of the vibes of the show, right? And as a writing team was like, yo, we're doing it different. We're going to propose and maybe even argue for a completely different viewpoint. That is ballsy. And not only that, but they wrote an episode that is visceral. And it's like, pump the heart. It's gritty. It is the week after we did a cartoon
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. I would say, I think I'm going to surprise you. I think it is just under 90. I would give it 89 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll be brief because I have to pee and Mike talked for 45 minutes. But
And 8 croissant.
so, I mean, yes to all that you said, and I'm gonna, like, I think just the philosophical, I'll spare everything other than the message of this episode. And you're right, it is very un-Trek or un-Starfleet, because the idea of Starfleet is that all things can be fixed and all things can be redeemed in the end. And I think that is the philosophy that we see from Pike. It is Starfleet's whole idea. The whole idea is everybody can be redeemed eventually. Everything can be fixed. We do it with heart. We do it with science. We do it with philosophy. We can fix it. We can make it better. We can redeem it. And I think what this episode says is that yes, and that I think that and I say this, I'm a Starfleet guy, right? I believe that way. I'm the super optimistic, liberal, anti-death penalty, pacifist, like everybody's got some good in him, and we can just get through to them. We can find a way. We can somehow explain. And I think that is a very important guiding principle that should be the starting point for everybody. But I think the reality is that is, like Mbenga says, a privileged point of view.
Yeah.
That is the point of view of somebody who hasn't gone through some of the things that Mbenga does. Like I can have all of my philosophies about war, right? But I've never fought in one. So I can only judge you up into a point because I don't know what that feels like. I haven't been through that trauma. And so I'm not in the position to tell somebody who went through that exactly what they should and shouldn't believe or think or do even, because I don't get it. There are some types of trauma that I do understand. And I do understand that it changes some of the rules. And I think that there's a line somewhere. And like to go back to the analogy of some of the Nazis, right? Like, can you redeem Mengele? Can you redeem Hitler or whatever? Or are there just some people who are irredeemable? And what do? I don't believe in the death penalty, but if I'm somebody who went through that and you run across one of these you're in Argentina and you went through that on the, and you see them in Argentina and you kill the guy on the spot, I'm not in any position to judge that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that
this guy was, I just read a story. He was strung out on meth and killed this little girl. And then the dad, if the dad saw him on the street and murdered that guy, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's you, man.
Well, I mean, yes, but even in that situation, it's not as bad because like if somebody's strung out on meth, don't have full agency over what they're going through. These people here, this guy, he wasn't compromised. He didn't have anything messing with his decision-making process. He chose to do all the things that he did with intent. And I think that analogy is like, and the fact that he was so full of shit, he was lying about it. He was exploiting it. And it wasn't like, oh my God, I did these horrible things. How can I make up for it? He's like, I'm kind of a hero. People need saints, right? And yeah, I mean, I think I don't have any frame of reference for what Mbenga would have been feeling in that moment, but I don't feel in any position to judge him for that. And I was totally fine with it, frankly.
I think I can articulate it.
Yeah.
Because I agree with everything you're saying. He's an incredible bad guy. That hubris, all that stuff is incredible.
Yeah.
The problem for me is that the way the episode was framed, or maybe the way I was watching it, I don't know, is that I didn't know he was that bad guy until the very end. And so all the stuff you just said was not the point I was taking away. The point I was taking away is like, oh, his peace thing, he's right. Like, here's a flawed man who did flawed things, and we have to find a way to square this circle. And then we find out, oh, he was like unceremoniously slaughtering kids, and then he's proud of it, and he's. But I don't get that until the last little bit.
I was fine with that.
Like,
And actually, my first reading of it was I trusted Mbenga's feelings. I did not trust him. I didn't buy his act right from the very beginning.
well, I just thought how hard they had Ortegas hit it in the beginning was telling me, the viewer, she's got to be proven wrong, and they swerve, and that's all fine too. I'm just saying it could have been. I wish I'd known that about him, so that I didn't trust him.
So you didn't feel bad, feel as conflicted, but I think that was the whole point.
And look, I'm not someone who I just want it always to be sunshine and roses. That's why I watch TV. I think it's great, but every once in a while, it's great to be challenged too, and that's what I felt here, which is all stuff. Okay, Keith, you need a number.
Anyway,
You loved it.
I loved it. I was emotionally affected by this. I thought it was thought-provoking, and the performances were phenomenal. I give it 93 self-sealing stem bolts.
So then we should do a musical next week.
Now let's do, oh my God, the tonal shifts for this. Now, I know, so next week is Subspace Rhapsody. Neither one of us have seen it yet. Both of us are professional musicians and musical theater writers and performers, so we're going to have some feelings about it. I am super excited. I know that
Going in with
having
an
it
open
be a
mind.
musical... Going in with the musical, I have a feeling that if I went to the IMDb ratings, there'd be a lot of 1s and a lot of 10s. I have got a feeling about where I'm gonna end on that.
Already?
Spectrum.
You haven't watched it.
No, but I have a feeling I'm more likely to be a 10 than a 1.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna
because you know how
find
hard
out
it is to write
together.
a musical.
I sure as hell do. I'll have notes, but I'm not gonna hate the fact that they did a musical.
Right.
I think the reason it's a 1 is they hate that they did a musical. And I'm like, it's Star Trek. We've done some much crazier shit than that.
I can't wait for the watch along. Can't wait for the watch along. Okay.
Next week, Subspace Rhapsody. Thank you so much for watching. Check out all of our other shows, all of our usual stuff. It's all above us there. You can reach us at, KME Entertainment at gmail.com.
K&M Entertainment. You can also, how about... just send us a comment on YouTube at this point, whatever.
Yeah,
Talk about
and give your
tonal
rating.
shifts, man. From the beginning of this episode to the end. Woo!
Woo. Well, I mean, if there is no other identifying feature to Strange New Worlds, it is wild tonal shifts. So there we go. Just like us. Let us know what you thought.
Not about us.
Are you,
Let us know about the
you,
episode.
Yeah, are you team kill the guy? Or are you team, that's not Starfleet? Let us know. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. Till then, this has been Strange New Show. Keep the mic watch, Strange New World.
SEO friendly.
I gotta pee. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.